In the previous video clip, we noted that at the post-industrial stage of the demographic transition, the society reaches zero population growth. This occurs when the birth rate equals the death rate. So the population numbers are stable. If population numbers are stable, it's also a whole lot easier to manage resources and pollution. Another way of talking about zero population growth is to talk about when the replacement fertility rate is reached. It's tempting to think that the replacement fertility rate must be about 2.0 because it would take 2 children to replace the 2 parents. But it's actually slightly higher than 2.0 because not all children reach adulthood and reproduce. The replacement fertility rate actually varies from country to country. Let's step back and define a very important term, total fertility rate. TFR, or total fertility rate, is the average number of children a woman has over the course of her lifetime. It's a really good indicator of tracking population growth trends in a particular country or region. Many countries have made great strides in decreasing their total fertility rates. Check out this graph and notice that China, of course, decreased its total fertility rate, but other countries in the world during this same time period have also dramatically decreased their TFRs. Check out Egypt and Brazil and Mexico. Check out this United Nations data that shows the enormous drop in TFR from the 1950s through today, both in developed regions and lesser developed regions. What will it take to reach zero population growth? And is it even possible? Well, assuming it's possible, it's going to take 2 steps. First, we have to figure out why birth rates are high in a particular country, and that might vary from country to country. And then we have to take steps to reduce them, to reduce the birth rates. There's many pronatalist pressures that can lead to high total fertility rates. We've listed a few here. Consider pausing the video for a moment and just reading through some of these pronatalist pressures. Notably, the desired family size is a good indicator of how many children a couple actually ends up having. So if pronatalist pressures can be reduced or reversed, the TFR will likely decrease. This graph shows that by and large, in places where people want to have more children, they have more children, and where they want to have less children, they have less children. So what will it take to make having less children more desirable? Here's a list of ways to reduce the TFR in particular countries. I encourage you to pause the video and check it out, and think of other ideas as well. Reading through these, it becomes apparent that if we simply elevate the status of women around the world, TFR is likely to go down. A huge factor in places that have a high TFR is the age that women tend to have their first child. If a woman has her first child at 14 or 15, 16, 18, somewhere young like that, she's far more likely to have more kids, and the generation time is going to be shorter too. Her kids will have kids. In fact, she might be a great-grandmother before she's 50. On the other hand, if there's educational opportunities for girls and young women, and that ends up putting off the date of having their first child until 20, 25, 30, 35, that woman is going to have far less children in her life, and also the generation time is going to be longer as well. The infographic 4.7 from your textbook drives home this point well. Regions with high TFR are fast growing, and they tend to also have a very young population, which means they're going to continue to grow, because as those children grow into the reproductive years, there's going to be a continued boom in reproduction. Let's take a look at age structure diagrams. Age structure diagrams can be very useful in predicting future population trends. Note that the x-axis here shows the percentage of a particular country that is in any particular age class, and the age classes are shown on the y-axis. Also, an age structure diagram typically divides up the population into male and female. Pause the video for a moment and study the age structure diagrams for these three countries. Check out Niger's age structure diagram and notice the large percentage of the population that's at the base. If a country has a large percentage of its population in the pre-reproductive ages, 0 to 14, we say that it has population momentum. Basically, this means that the population will continue to grow for some time, even if the total fertility rate were to drop to replacement rates. This is because there's a large percentage of the population nearing the reproductive age. And when they get into the reproductive age, there's going to be a continued boom in population. Again, we would say that Niger has population momentum. Next, look at China. The pre-reproductive age is no longer the largest component. The age structure diagram base in the pre-reproductive is about the same size as the reproductive years. The post-reproductive years, 45 plus, is slightly larger. This population will grow slowly. Lastly, consider the age structure diagram of Japan, where the pre-reproductive ages are smaller than the reproductive ages and the post-reproductive ages. This population may be stable, or without immigration, the population may actually decline in size. Here are three other countries: Nigeria, the United States, and Germany. Pause the video and take a look at them and decide if they have population momentum, if they have a fairly stable population, or if they might actually experience population decline. Looking back at infographic 4.3, we can see that Africa, the Middle East, and parts of South Asia have quite a few countries in the very young or youthful population category that are likely experiencing population momentum. So even if the TFR in these countries were to be reduced down to replacement fertility levels, the countries would still continue to grow. Many of these countries already have severe environmental, economic, and/or social issues. How will a rapidly increasing population affect their situation? Yikes. Countries with declining populations have their own set of problems. With an aging population, a country will have a reduction in the percentage of their population involved in the workforce. This can increase tax burdens and strain social programs, health systems, and pension systems. Further, the country may need to encourage immigration in order to remain productive. And in some cases, especially in societies that were previously closed to immigration, this can present a new array of social and cultural issues. Perhaps Japan and some of the countries in Northern Europe and some of the countries perhaps in Western Europe as well might be good countries to check out to see if any of these issues apply to them. How about the United States? Is the United States overpopulated? The definition in your textbook for overpopulation is that more people are living in an area than its natural and human resources can support. But why can't the resources support the population? And what about countries that tend to import all their resources, or a lot of extra resources? Let's review the two types of overpopulation. This is from topic 1 earlier in the course when we talked about the underlying causes of environmental issues. There's people overpopulation, where the environment is worsening because there are simply too many people in a given geographic area, even though the resource use per person is very small. And then there's consumption overpopulation, where each individual in a population consumes too large a share of their resources, or perhaps better to say more than their fair share of resources. Clearly, people overpopulation is a problem in many of the less developed regions of the world. And the more developed regions of the world tend to be guilty of consumption overpopulation. Interestingly, the developed regions of the world represent less than 20% of the world's population, yet we consume more than 50% of the world's resources. Is that sustainable? What are the impacts on different regions of the world? Can we really say that the developing countries' high growth rates are the primary cause of environmental issues? And also, importantly, what will happen as these less developed countries become more developed and start having higher rates of resource use? A final concept related to overpopulation is carrying capacity. Carrying capacity is the population size that an area can support for the long term. Of course, this depends on both the resource availability and the per capita resource use by the population. If everyone used very few resources, the carrying capacity would be very high. If everybody uses a lot of resources, the carrying capacity would be quite low. This concept can be used for a country, a region, or globally. It's interesting that carrying capacity is stated in terms of the population size that an area can support for the long term. Perhaps another question to ask, instead of how many people can live on the earth, is what is the acceptable quality of life here on earth? If we all reduced our resource consumption dramatically, we could certainly support more people on earth. Some interesting questions to go along with this include, do you agree that all people in all countries should have access to the basic requirements of life? A balanced diet, clean water, decent shelter, adequate clothing, etc. Should everyone on earth have access to the same standard of living? Or do some people get access to a higher standard? If you think that everyone has equal rights, then what standard of living is acceptable? Can we all live as the average U.S. citizens currently do? Notably, that's not even possible. We'd need several more Earths. Or should we be living at a lower standard of living? Will new technologies allow us all to reach a higher life quality using less resources and polluting less? These are all good questions. What do you think? Nobody really knows what the carrying capacity of the Earth is, though some people suggest we might already be beyond it. But interesting, carrying capacity can change, right? If we all use more resources, the carrying capacity will go down. If we use less resources, the carrying capacity goes up. So there's lots of ways that we could increase or decrease the carrying capacity. New technologies, for instance, can increase carrying capacity. But destruction of our resource base is going to decrease our carrying capacity. Let's finish looking at this interesting infographic from your book. It shows that some regions of the world are already using more than they can produce in their region. So I guess they're beyond the carrying capacity of their particular region and surviving only due to the import, the globalization of resources. Interesting to check out. Finally, one of this week's assignments, the ecological footprint assignment, has you looking at what it takes to support you. It's a pretty cool assignment. Check it out.